we take it for granted in Thailand because Bumgrad's been around for 45 years. But
Hmm.
the business model for Americans who have never traveled abroad, their hair catches on fire when they find out that over 30,000 Americans get on a plane every year, fly to Bangkok for heart valve replacement
Mhm.
or knee replacement or things of that nature. So,
Well, I think it's like when you're leading change, the hardest part is to get people to trust you enough to follow. Team don't resist change because they hate change, but they resist it because they don't yet trust the persons who leading it. So how do you build trust? Especially in cross culture, under high pressure, and with this uncertainty in 2026. In this episode, we're sitting down with David Boucher, former CEO of Bumrungrad International Hospital, Phuket, visiting lecturer at Harvard, Yale, and Cornell, and someone who has spent 47 years turning no hope hospital into a high performing teams. Whether you are leading teams in Bangkok, Boston, or somewhere in between, these conversations will give you a practical insights of how to lead change across hospitals, cultures, and under high pressure service environment. So let's dive in. Well, I think it's like our country is aiming to be that. I mean, Thailand aiming to be the hub of wellness tourism and also getting more income and stabilities from that industry. So yeah, thank you very much. So actually, you have led change and transformations in wellness and healthcare industry for I think over 4 decades.
that's
Yeah.
right, 47 years.
Wow. So yeah. So your knowledge and experience surely is a wisdom to our audience. And then I think our goal in the episodes, like I discussed with you earlier, is just like for you to share your journey as leaders and maybe share with us some transformations challenges that you might face. So leader in this space can resonate themselves on your journey and understand what it takes to be successful. Okay, so I think the first questions I like to ask is, may I take you back to your early days in any organizations that you were put there to lead change and transformations? What was your first action when you stepped into the organization?
Us, good question. So the first action, I think, in any organization, I try to listen. I try to keep an open mind and I try to talk with employees, meet with many employees. Think, by way of education, my graduate degree, both of my degrees are in healthcare administration. I don't have an MBA. I have an MBWA, management by wandering around.
Mhm.
That's really my approach. My approach is to when I'm new in an organization, even long term, is to try to make myself available, get out, get into the nursing stations, get into the lab, get into diagnostic imaging, go to physiotherapy. Really, from day one, try to spend at least 50% of my time for the first really couple of weeks getting out into the different units and try to listen. Over time, with the staff, and I mean, I'm a firm believer that the frontline staff in most organizations, not just healthcare, but the frontline staff in most organizations, they know where the problems are,
Mm,
Mhm.
and many of them they have solutions. But the challenge, of course, is that very few managers ask them. They're
Mhm.
minimalized, they're marginalized, and so they really don't have that opportunity. At the same time, I think many times, I would say probably 80% of the times, the same employees have suggestions and recommendations for how to eliminate the problem, how to improve service, clinical service, or whatever it may be. And many times they're not thinking in terms of 1 or 2 million baht or two
mm,
million dollar solutions. They're thinking in something that is much more reasonable. That's really the first thing to do is just to start building relationships
mm,
with the employees, with their managers and supervisors and things of that nature. And then after I've been, I will say at least 2 or 3 nights a year when I'm in facility management, at least 2 or 3 nights a year, I'll go in unannounced in the middle of the night. And as unhealthy as it is, I'll bring Krispy Kreme donuts, and then at least one morning a week, I try to get to the hospital by 6:30 in the morning. The reason for that is that shift change in most facilities, similar to hotels, is at
mm,
7, 3, and 11, 7 a.m., 3 p.m., and 11 p.m., the 8 hour shift. And so I'll try to be there, get to know the nurses, the graveyard shift nurses, the night nurses. And in so many ways in healthcare organizations, the nurses really run the hospital at night.
Hmm.
And they're there to make, and they're, obviously with physician support when they need to be and stuff, but the nurses are there 24/7, 365. So it's really important for those nurses to have a comfort level with the chief executive, I believe. And over time, they'll grow to trust you,
Hmm.
and they'll let you know. They'll let you know where the problems are, let you know who the problem physicians are, and so that you won't hear any other place, but they know.
Thinks it feels like you're very hands-on chief executives who's there with CRISPR teams and then things that maybe
Mhm.
others people might not think about. But one questions pop up in my mind, like as a chief executive, doing all this stuff, getting in, trying to speak to everybody, would it be too much for them? There's other stuff that the CEO need to handle.
Well, there's absolutely other stuff, but I think perhaps I'm a different kind of leader. But I remind myself a couple things every day. When you're in the hospital, you're in the service business. We're not making automobiles. We're not putting together motorcycles. Uh, we're in the service business. We're to steal
Mhm.
from the Ritz-Carlton hotel chain. We truly are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And so the business is based on, it's about people. A year into it, you can't be spending 50% of your time out and about with the employees and stuff. But every single day, at least 3 times a week, I'm going to make the rounds. I'm going to get out there and everything else. And, you start to becoming Facebook friends with your employees now and Instagram and things of that nature. And you'll see on there that their husband had a birthday the previous week. You see them, you say, hey, happy birthday to your
Mm.
husband and things of that nature. You generate so much street cred with your employee base when you're doing things like that. So that's just how I manage. I think that's critically important
Mm.
when you're in the service business and things. We're not dealing directly with robots. We're dealing with human beings that have lives, they have families, they have mortgages, they have pets. I remind myself every day again that the word hospital is in hospitality. And
Mm.
that's I've been in this business over 47 years now, and so we're in the service business. It's about taking care of each other. And number three, I think I would say that I firmly believe, you've heard this perhaps before, the golden rule of the Four Seasons hotel chain. Treat your employees as you would want to be treated yourself as an employee. I firmly believe that great service drives the P&L, drives the income statement. In
Mm.
many different industries, collectively drive to improve our Net Promoter Score, our patient satisfaction scores. It drives patient volume, and it drives revenue and it drives profitability. I'm absolutely convinced of that. I mean, over the last,
Mm.
handful of years, a few have tried to convince me otherwise, but I'm just hard headed. I really, really believe that that's the case. So, and I
Mm.
firmly believe that if we take care of our employees, they will take care of our customers, which is not just patients. When you're in a hospital setting, your
Mhm.
customers are your physicians.
Mm.
Your customers certainly are your patients, but your patients' families as well. All of those are critically important. So, to me, as a chief executive, that's really, really important.
Yeah, I
Mm.
mean, to me, it seems like,
Mm.
David, if there is something called as a trust account, you deposit heavily at the beginning into that account.
Mm.
Well, it's a good point. And of course, where we are now in Thailand is a, significantly 98% Buddhist country.
Mm,
So it's a function, I think, of making merit, but not
mm,
necessarily to Buddha. I don't mean this to be disrespectful in any way. I'm not a Buddhist, but I know about making merit. And I
Mm.
believe, what you just said, I think, but, by making merit, by honoring our employees who are taking care of our customers, we don't have to seek dividends. They are automatically paid.
David,
Mhm.
if I can go back to the point you made that when you enter a new organization where you're leading change, and that's why you've been brought in, you highlighted that usually the staff has the awareness. They are aware what the problems are, where the problems are, what the solutions are, but it seems the managers aren't. How do you tackle this situation? How do you bring the key stakeholders be aware of what the problem really is and get their buy-in?
It's a great question, and a very complex one.
Mm.
The answer to it is very complex on a number of fronts, and I'll explain. I think, many times employees have been led to believe that they've done a really good job. So they may be marching to the beat of the wrong drum. I really enjoy turnaround work. That's what I really, really love doing. I've led turnaround teams 4 or 5 different times in my career, and it's really a whole lot of fun. And many times that I will share with you my first hospital CEO's job back in 1994, when I agreed to go into the position as CEO from a hospital in northern Vermont in the U.S. as basically VP of operations. The hospital was probably 5 months from bankruptcy, and so it was a very, very difficult situation. And I had colleagues of mine telling me I was insane taking this job and moving, to North Carolina from Vermont. And one of the things this was basically would have been my third turnaround opportunity in my healthcare management career, that it's not because of any fault of most of the employees. I say most with intent, with caution. But they just had poor direction. They had poor leadership over the years and everything else. But I
Mm.
accepted the job because the board of directors was committed to keeping the facility open. And just as important, the medical staff, 5 or 6 key small hospital, 72 bed, the key physicians were committed as well. What I found that really, and this will be a common thread that I've learned, is that I think it's important for the employees to have what I call the gift of desperation,
Mm-hmm.
and it truly is a gift. So again, many times, again, employees don't want to change. Sometimes boards don't want to change. They're like, okay, yeah, we're 5 months from bankruptcy, but we're going to do it our way, and we're going to keep trying to put this square peg into a round hole. And you know what Einstein's definition of insanity is, right? Keep doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result.
Mm.
And so this particular situation back in 1994, the board they knew they needed change, they needed improvement, they needed a professional manager to come in. At the time, I was 34 years old. I was about 2 weeks from being 35, and it was just a good opportunity. But the employees were teachable. The
Mm.
employees, at that point, the hospital, everybody in management had taken a 20% reduction in pay, voluntary across the board. The staff had not had a raise in probably 3 or 4 years. They were tired. I can tell you, the name of the hospital was Good Hope Hospital. It's still open. But many, many people in this particular community called it No Hope Hospital. And
Mm.
so, it was, but not for long. Within a year, that changed. And so, I had to get in and basically create a high performing team, a
Mm.
leadership team, just as quickly as possible. And so, I realized the first day on the job, I literally was in my office maybe 15 minutes, and I went out, I walked around, I spent time with the nurses, with the lab techs, with the maintenance crew people, with the registration people. I spent probably a couple hours at the emergency room, and which is the lifeblood, pun intended, in many hospitals. And so literally the first day on the job at 4:30 in the afternoon, I terminated the chief nursing officer. And I'm a coach. I played high school and college soccer, and then I coached for 21 years. So I love coaching. I love teaching. I love coaching kids up, and I
Mm.
love coaching managers up as well. But sometimes when you're literally 4 or 5 months from financial ruin, you don't have time. You literally don't have time. And so I remember meeting with the chief nursing officer at the time at 4:30 in the afternoon, and I said, "Listen, I'm sorry. Things aren't going to work out for you here. I'm going to pay you 30-day severance, and I need your badge and your key, employee badge and stuff." And he was shaken. It was a male CNO, and he said, "You can't fire me." And I said, "Well, yeah, I just did." And so he said, "You've only been here for 8 hours. How can you make that kind of a rash decision?"
Mm.
And I told him, and I just said, "Look, I won't mention it by name, but I just said I spent easily 4 or 5 hours of my day with nursing crew, and looking and listening and smelling and watching nonverbals and everything else. And I said, regrettably, very few, if any, of our nursing staff had ironed their white uniforms when they came to work this morning. Their body posture, they're slumped over, their shoulders are down, they're discouraged and everything else. No wonder many in the community called us no hope hospital. Many of the nurses exude no hope, and patients look at them for hope. And so I said, that starts with you. You're the chief nursing executive. And I said, this can't continue. We need to make change. And so we did that. I terminated his employment. I won't go into all the details, but I literally 2 days later, I hired a replacement CNO, also a male, which I wasn't looking for. I was specifically looking for a female. But this fellow called me up, had an ad in the newspaper, and he says, my name is Bob. That's his real name. And he said, I'm a recently retired Navy commander from the U.S. Navy. I was the chief nursing officer at the Navy Hospital in Charleston, South Carolina, when Hurricane Hugo hit in, I think, 1989. And he said, I've been retired for 2 months. My wife says I can't stay home because I'm driving her crazy, and I would like to come talk to you about the job. Wow. And by 4 o'clock that afternoon, I had offered him the position. And, the U.S. Navy is known, certainly in American circles, as having the best preventive maintenance in the world. I know that's egocentric, if you will, but and I was born in a Navy hospital. My father served with 7 years in the Navy, 23 years in the Air Force. So I come from a military background, and I knew that we really needed the dignity, the respect that Navy nurses are held in very high esteem around the world, military nurses in general. So it's the same with Army nurses, Air Force nurses, and all. And so, and this guy literally turned nursing on a dime. And it's in 30 days, in 60 days, it was amazing the changes. He didn't terminate anybody, zero. I mean, but he was literally the Navy way. You coach people up and whatever. And so it was truly remarkable the way that happened. And I'll share with you one anecdote along this line, because it's difficult for me to share this story without getting emotional. It was incredible what happened. About a year and a half later, this particular nurse executive, he asked the nurse managers, so OR, operating theater, ICU, emergency room, infection control, some of the other med surge, pediatrics. He asked the nurses for National Nurses Week if they would wear their white nursing hats and pins from when they graduated nursing school. He asked them. He didn't tell them. He said, I think for Nurses Week, for next week, it would be really kind of interesting if you would do that and everything else. They all agreed, let's do it. By Tuesday, every single nurse in the hospital had their hats and pins on. And it was, again, overwhelming. We're used to this in Thailand. Our nurses wear white. They wear their hats, their pins. It's an honorable profession. Nurses nurse with pride. I think that's my observation as a Farang, as an expatriate. But in America, in most hospitals, you can't tell the difference between a nurse, a housekeeper, or a dietary worker. They're all, wearing scrubs. They're into, different colors maybe and things of that nature. Well, I can tell you, the local newspaper. We were in a competitive situation. There was another hospital about 4 miles away. The local newspaper got inundated with letters to the editor about Good Hope Hospital and the nurses wearing white and their hats and their pins. It was phenomenal. It wasn't staged. It was literally, it was really, I didn't even realize it until the Monday of Nurses Week when I walked in with, whatever to say, going around, making my rounds, Happy Nurses Day and things of that nature. Maybe we had flowers sent to the different units and stuff, and happened to notice that the nurse managers never even asked their employees, their other nurses, to wear their hats and pins. They at that point, they followed, that it was incredible. It was really a phenomenal story. And I think that was probably the watershed moment. That was the tipping point at the facility. I would think probably, within about 18 months from moving there, we had We had every bed filled. We had growth problems. We couldn't get people out of beds quickly enough, meaning the doctor said they're ready to go home at 10 o'clock. If they couldn't leave until 4, we had patients in the ER that were waiting in gurneys on beds to get into rooms and stuff like that. Success breeds success. People want to be part of employees want to be part of a successful organization, but it also breeds a whole new set of problems. And they're good problems. That's what I call good problems.
Wow, that is like a very impressive story. And especially when you say people just do things with their own intentions to wear their uniforms and to forced to do so. When people do things from their own heart, that is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's why I think specifically with Bumrungrad International, there was a very famous TV show, still is, on Sunday nights called CBS 60 Minutes, the 60-minute show. It's a documentary. They usually have 4, maybe 5 segments. They're 7 to 8 minutes long. There was a 6.5-minute video presentation. They actually came to Bumrungrad and they did a focus on Bumrungrad and medical tourism and everything. There's several shots of nurses in the 6.5-minute video of nurses with their hats and pins on and white uniforms and everything else. I used that video in marketing between 2006. I still use it. I've used it in the last 60 days. And in American circles with American companies, almost without exception, people in the audience will say, that's how nurses should look, or something along those lines. That's how nurses used to look in America and everything. And so, certainly Western patients, whether they're Canadians, whether they're European, whether they're American, they recognize that as a positive thing, not uniformly, but probably 90% as a good thing, as a reflection of professionalism and maturity and things of that nature. So it's worth watching. It's pretty amazing and that video in April of 2006 put Bumrungrad on the radar screen in North America. It was really a game changer for Bumrungrad, I think. So.
When David, you talk about a team of nurses wearing similar uniforms, it's like to me, it seems like a very high-performing team who's moving in the same direction with that clarity and passion that why they are here. It seems they are aware of what they're doing here and they feel proud of it.
Correct.
In order to feel that for a team, to have the nurses voluntarily wear the uniform and that pin, what kind of leadership you think is required to bring out the best in a team?
I think that leadership obviously is very important. I don't want to say claim that this is a copy and paste approach, because it's not. How we manage people, there's a saying in some management circles in the US, when it comes to managing our employees, who we are is what we were when. So for instance, who we are, my developmental years were in the late 60s and early 70s. Well, the late 60s in America were very, very turbulent in a number of different ways. The Beatles were doing their thing and everything but it was a violent time. We had chaos. Vietnam was going on, the war in Vietnam, and most Americans wanted no part of being in Vietnam. They didn't think we should be there, and it was a very turbulent time. At the same point, for those of us, so I'm a baby boomer, my parents lived through the Depression, ended after World War II, basically, so 45. And so it was very, really difficult times versus, let's say, employees that you have. So I'm managed one way specifically because that's who I was, who you are is what you were when. So what was I in the 70s? What was I in the 80s? What was, and everything else. And so same with you folks. I'm not sure exactly your age, but your values, what's going to motivate you, the two of you as employees, there's a high likelihood statistically that it's totally different than somebody who's 19 years old today, who is all about self, is all about selfies. It's Instagram, everything is Insta. And so it's really kind of different. So I think part of it is what exactly is the demographic makeup of the employee base, to answer your question. So it's not one size fits all. It never is. I think is number one. And number two, I think it's a function of where the organization is. I mean, I've been in organizations that I've taken new roles on and things that the employees did not think, they thought everything was fine. They didn't feel any, they were not compelled to improve services. They were not compelled to improve revenue. When you go in and say, look, this place is a mess. We've got a lot of work to do. They really, if they don't buy it, they don't buy in at that point, then it becomes very difficult. And so, and accordingly, one of the things that I've done to try to address that early on, is to begin doing consumer or in the healthcare business patient satisfaction surveys. And I can tell you, my last job in the U.S., I was the president and COO of a chain of urgent care centers, 55 walk-in clinics in the state of South Carolina, open every day from 8 in the morning till 8 at night, 7 days a week. And most holidays, not all, Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving, maybe only half days. And so at that point, the company was 35 years old, and they were doing very, very poorly, and they needed a lot of work and a lot of attention. And regrettably, the day that I was offered and accepted the position, the CFO was actually in a federal penitentiary for stealing, embezzling $7 million from the chain. So that $7 million, whereas it should have gone into the clinics, should have gone into continuing education for employees, should have gone into new equipment, should have gone into implementing an electronic medical record, it was stolen by one particularly controlling CFO who's now since passed away. I knew that we were going to improve service. We were going to roll our sleeves up. We were going to work 7 days a week as a management team, certainly for the first month or two, to really get our arms around where we needed to be and everything. But one of the first things that I started doing was I implemented a patient satisfaction, knowing that when we started getting feedback, it was going to be really bad. So I knew we were going to get really slammed. I knew that the first year of getting patient satisfaction surveys, that were going to be the feedback, the information was going to be predominantly negative. I just had a good idea, because I lived in the community. I had gone to some of their places, and I thought they were just junky. There was trash everywhere, paper piled up, magazines on the coffee tables were 3, 4, 5 years old. It was nasty, and everything. And so, and I knew that, so I had that impression, but if it was just me telling the employees, the leadership, the clinical director, the chief operating officer, look, we've got serious problems here and everything else. If we have managers of 55 different clinics, they all thought they were doing great. They had no idea. And so we implemented through basically 100% sample. So if we had a good email address or phone number, we sent patient satisfaction surveys out. Very easy. 9 questions and a free form text box. And so you don't get everything that you want to know, but keep it simple, right? Just give people, literally it takes less than 20 seconds. On a scale of 1 to 10, did we meet your expectations as a patient? Overall, how was your patient satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10? Net promoter score, would you recommend us to friends and family? 1 to 10, and everything else. And then how are our nurses? How are our doctors? How are the facilities? And then, so very quick, dot, 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 click, 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 and then a free form text box. And so I knew, because I had done this 2 or 3 times earlier in my career, I knew that it couldn't have been the opinion, according to David, that it really needed to be what our customers were saying, right? And so it was, we had some really good physicians. We had some good clinical staff. I'm not saying that, but the facilities we needed paint, we needed new floors, we needed new equipment and everything else. And so we implemented that. We started getting feedback, and the managers of the clinic, they received their own surveys for just their clinic. So 55 managers, and then we had a director over maybe 6 or 7 clinics. They got their feedback for just those 6 or 7. And then any patient on a score of 1 to 10, any patient who gave us a 1 to a 5 had to have a call by the regional director within 24 hours. And one of the things that I did, I just will tell you this, is probably about 3 or 4 times a week, any of the surveys that came back that had a comment, they would automatically go into one of my folders in Outlook. Those are the only ones. Otherwise, we had a dashboard. And we were getting probably 200 or 300 a day back. And ones that had, comments and things like that, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, I would call that person on the phone. I would log into the system because I would find their phone number out. I would call them on the phone and I'd say, hello, Mrs. Jones. This is David Boucher. I'm the president of this urgent care chain. This is before I had a chance to actually drive around the state and visit all 55 urgent care centers and things like that. So, and then it's interesting. Patients, customers would say on the phone, who is this? And I would say, my name is David Boucher. I'm the president of the urgent care chain and just wanted to thank you. And they would say, do you have time to call all your customers? I said, no, ma'am, but I made time to call you and everything else. And I just want to thank you for your honest feedback. And you have my commitment that we will aspire to get better. We will improve. Well, what do you suppose that person did? If they did nothing else, Mrs. Jones told her husband, told her boyfriend, told her girlfriend, whatever. They told other people, I just got a call from the CEO, from the president of this urgent care center. Do you know anything else? That's number one. So it have your customers basically become, in the world of word of mouth, in the world of social media. Yeah, exactly. They start advertising for you. And number two, again, I tell people, I believe that doing satisfaction surveys has the number one most profitable ROI, return on investment, of anything you can do in marketing. I've seen this. But then you have to listen. So you listen, and then you have to respond. You respond to that feedback. When they come into your clinic the next week, 6 months later, and they see significant change, then they know, wow, this is good. So I will tell you, so the average response for patient satisfaction surveys in America for outpatient is probably 4%. We were at 17%.
Wow.
So 4x, 4 times what the national average is for outpatient. Why? Because our customers knew that we were sincere in our asking and that we were going to take response on things. It was amazing. The feedback that we got. And then, of course, if people gave us like an 8, 9, or 10, we would give them the opportunity to basically post in Google ratings. Okay. And then, so people want us, if they had a really over the top experience. And so, our focus changed from, we listened, the throughput time was too slow, on and on and on. But, our net promoter score, we started at about 50, 55. We ended up in the high 80s, 5 years down the road. In medical care, it's difficult to get in the high 90s in any hospital that suggests that they're in the high 90s. I'm suspect of their processes and everything else because, so many patients want a cure. And if they don't get a cure, then they trash you, they're upset or whatever. We dramatically improved patient satisfaction and our net promoter score and everything. But we also doubled top line revenue from $80 million US in 2012, my last full year there, 2017, to $160 million US. So we doubled top line revenue without increasing our charges one single time. We did it all through improving the patient journey when it comes to patient satisfaction. And it takes human beings. And so it's just and once our center managers realized that they weren't going to be browbeaten, we didn't think they were bad, but we encouraged them to be innovative and to make change and things like that. And this is very cliche, but it makes in an operation like that, it truly does take teamwork to make the dream work. Right? You explain to people, this is where we are. From a service perspective, this is where we need to be. We're in a very competitive situation. The venture capitalists were coming into our state, opening up urgent care. It seemed like, 5 a week around the state. So, we had to be better and faster. The organization wanted to grow. We wanted to add new centers and things. But my focus for about the first 18 months was we need to get a whole lot better before we get a whole lot bigger.
As if you understand or you can foresee what questions that I'm popping up in my head, because you talk a lot about external clients. I mean, it's a customer. external customer, as in the patients and then the families of the patients and whoever that's come to take their service from the hospitals. I want to understand a little bit about the internal customer, like the stakeholders, people that working in organizations. You say that 55 departments on those time. I suppose that it will be all American in the same nationality, similar background. Do you get any pushback with you taking up the survey and then trying to do some change and then trying to tell them this is what the customer telling you?
So, obviously, so we would get surveys that would name employees by name. And if they were positive, you PDF it, and I would email it directly to the employee. And they might be off for 2 days because should they come back in and say, thank you for taking care of our customers and everything else. Focus on the positive, and let their supervisor manager deal with some of the negative things that we had. So I think that was important. And at one point we wanted to get individual staff buy-in specifically. So we started a program with the patient service reps, the registrar, the person at the front desk who was the first person that came into. And we basically said, we're going to run a contest for whoever gets their name the most in patient satisfaction survey, even if the person just types in their name in the free-form text box. Like Julie Smith was great. Whoever wins in the first month, myself and our chief operating officer are going to come to your clinic and we're going to wash your car in the parking lot.
Wow.
So totally crazy, like totally, totally misaligned, just fun, but really a fun thing.
Interesting.
And so because we knew that these people were the face of the organization, the first person that the patient would see when they came in. And so we wanted them to be cheerful at some level, but certainly empathetic of the person coming in because they may not be feeling well or their kids are sick or they needed stitches. They cut themselves open. It was that kind of an environment. But we wanted them to know that we were willing to put our money where we needed improvement because we were getting responses back that the person at the front was nasty or they weren't so nice or they need a checkup from the neck up or they need an attitude adjustment or things of that nature. So most of the people had 1 or 2, 3 times their name. And we had one of these front office people from the center in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I'll never forget. I remember her by name. I won't use it, but she had probably 22 or 23 times that her name was used in this. So she was an outlier. She wasn't just the winner. She was so far. So you start thinking, are these hacked? Are these surveys hacked? Is somebody messing around with this system or whatever, and everything else? So that's it. But good to our word. A couple of days later, we made sure she was working. It was a sunny day. South Carolina was hot, probably 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And so myself and our COO drove an hour and a half to her center, and we had short pants on, and we had there was a hose there, but we brought a bucket and suds, and she had a big truck. Literally, it took us a while, but we washed her. And so she went out there and she took pictures and everything. We had patients taking pictures of it. They put it on their Facebook page and everything else. And so I remember asking her. I said, "Well, just out of curiosity," I said, "How is it that you were able to get so many responses? I mean, clearly you're an affable woman, and everything, and you've been with us for probably 2 or 3 years at the time, and so the average was maybe 2 or 3 per employee. You were at 22 or 23 for the month. How is that possible?" She said, "Well, what I did was during my lunch break, I went down to the local Instaprint, which instaprint.com. You can have business cards made online. You can get 100 business cards for $9, right?" She went down to the local print shop. She took our logo off the website. She did this all on herself. She put her name down there, right on there. So when people were checking out, if they had a good experience, so she used it to her, there were no rules. So she said, so if people had a good experience, she would say, "My name's Lucretia. Here's my card. In about 6 hours, you're going to get a patient satisfaction survey from our CEO." And she said, "Sugar, I'd really appreciate it if you would use my name." That was it. So she gave out these cards. She gave out like 100 cards. And sure enough, about 25% of them used her name and everything else. So she won. So a lot of the other staff, how did they react? Oh, she cheated. She broke the
Mm,
rules. And there were no rules,
Mhm.
right? Not only would I encourage you, I will pay the $9 out of my pocket if you go and have business cards made and everything else. So that was a way to answer your question to get buy-in. And then of course the prize could no longer be washing the car. It had to be something a little bit more. It was fun the first, but we did
mm,
a lot of fun things like that, and it really paid off. So
mm. Yeah, it seems like that kind of stuff, it's working in America. And I know maybe my small perspective and my understanding about American and American cultures. May I ask you about other place that you were put in, like because you work in many countries
sure,
and work in cross-cultural environment.
you bet. Yeah, it's a great question. So it's interesting. The medical tourism business is very complex,
Mm,
very complex. Um, and there's so many moving pieces, let alone currency, valuations, political changes, unrest, good things happening in different countries around the world and everything. In Bummagrad specifically, we we treat international patients a week, every single week. So over 600,000 a year. There's no place in the world that's even close, remarkably close. I think the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, the top two hospitals, according to Newsweek magazine, in the world, #1 and #2. They treat, like in Rochester, Minnesota, and in Cleveland, Ohio, maybe 10,000 international patients on those campuses in a year. We treat over 10,000 a week, every single week for 52 and have for years. And so
mm,
it's a very complex business, if you will. And so, at Bummagrad alone today, we have employees from 28 countries around the globe.
mm,
And again, if you go back to who you are is what you were when. If you were
mm,
working in Myanmar when there was a civil war, then that's important to you, critical to your family and everything else. And then you were able to get out and come work and things of that nature. Or if you were, in Bangladesh, Bummagrad has over 200 full-time interpreters on staff. So, you're right. It is cultural. It's a challenge. I think, one of the stories that comes to mind is when I was in Dubai. So
mm,
I worked for a hospital chain based in Dubai from January of 2021 through July or August of 2022. And at first, it was very difficult getting around because COVID was, places were shut down. Everybody had to wear a mask, of course, and it was a challenge and stuff. But come about February, March, April of 2021 in Dubai, things started to loosen up a little bit. I went to visit one of our. I wasn't able to get. We had, I think the company owned maybe 7 hospitals in Dubai alone. They own 31 hospitals in 7 countries, about 24,000 employees. Half of the hospitals were in the Middle East. 16 were in India, from
mm,
Bangalore, Hyderabad, south. Interesting. I went to one of our top brand hospitals in Dubai, and I was meeting my hospitality staff there, but I intentionally showed up 30 minutes early, got a cup of coffee, sat in the front lobby and listened and smelled and watched, touched, and just experienced it as a nobody. I took my badge off, so the people there and everything else. And so 3 or 4 of my staff came in, my service staff came, excuse me, and they said, oh, they were shocked. You're here already. I'm like, yeah, I came early just to observe. I'm a big fan of secret shopper. I can
mm,
share other stories about that. So this was not necessarily a secret shopper opportunity, but I said, let me ask a question. I said, is this hospital in a section of Dubai that has a high crime rate? And they burst out laughing. They said, well, of course not. There's no crime in Dubai. I mean, it literally, to me, it's the
mm,
safest city in the
Yeah.
world I've ever lived in. I love living there. And I knew the answer before I asked it, but I wanted just to prove a point. And
mm,
they said, why would you ask that? And I said, turn around and look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 security guards. And I said, why you have so much security here? If there's no crime and stuff, why is there so much security?
mm,
Well, the staff started to backpedal a little bit. I said, well, they're here to help people. Again, I knew that answer before I asked the question, but I was being a bit disingenuous and coy on purpose. And I said, okay, so they're here to help people. Right. So if somebody needs a wheelchair, I said, okay, well, I've been here for 30 minutes. They haven't moved, but I believe you that that's the case. And sure enough, a couple minutes later, a person got off the elevator. The guard, security guard, saw that the person needed a wheelchair, and so they brought it over, and he's got in it and helped the person out in there. So I said, I have an idea. Now, for people, my wife will tell you this. For people, if you want to get my attention, if I'm in the office at 7:15 in the morning, 7:30, and any employee stands at my door and says, Mr. David, I have an idea. At that point, you have my time and attention, because it might be nitnoy or it might be mock. But you don't know at that point. That person at least has had the courage to basically say, I'm going to go to the CEO or whatever your title is, even if it's your manager, and say, I have an idea about how we might improve something, whatever. So so I said it to my staff. I said, I have an idea. I said, why don't we ask the security guards if they want to be part of the hospitality team, the service? And I go, well, they're part of a purchase service and everything else. So it's purchase service means we're paying them with an outside agency, but we're paying them. So we're the customer, right? So why don't we ask them? So we walked up, myself and this other fellow, we walked up to two of the guards, and he genuinely asked the question. He said, in addition to simply standing around all day, would you like to be part of the hospitality staff? Same black pants, same white shirt, but instead of an industry-wide blazer, we want to put a maroon blazer, a cranberry colored blazer, because our hospitality staff had blazers on and stuff like that. Would you like that? And we would want you to be more involved with helping give directions and everything else. You know what happened to both of them? Their body posture changed. Their chests went out, their chins went out, their backs straightened. These guys were bored to tears. They wanted to do more, but nobody had ever asked them. Nobody ever thought about that. And I don't say that to be diminishing in any ways. It's just an anecdotal. We were able to basically triple our hospitality staff throughout the hospital simply by changing the color of the jacket from black to maroon. We had happier security guards and everything else. So, and again, our patients benefited from that. So, many of the employees in Dubai are Indian, predominantly from Kerala, a lot of Filipinos, but they're the same thing. There's people from over 200 countries any given day working in Dubai. So we've got literally a melting pot of people from all over the world. But in that particular case, it wasn't a function of being Pakistani. It wasn't a function of being Indian. It wasn't a function of being Filipino or Filipina or American. It was a function, I think, that people want to contribute. I have found that the meaning of happiness, again, is being able to contribute to your family, to your organization, to your garden, whatever it might be. And so.
It sounds to me it's like, okay, you might not even get any challenge on facing any challenge in cross-cultural thing because of your mindset and your belief system that, okay, everybody is actually want to contribute to do certain thing. And if you give that opportunities for people to share ideas or to get in hand on something and do something more that can solve the problems. Girish, want to ask something?
Yes. One of the challenges, or probably one of the most predominant challenges that our clients face who come to us is miscommunication or lack of trust within the team, especially due to the differences. Because they come from different places, maybe they process things differently, their value systems are different. Have you ever experienced that kind of dynamics within the team where the team seems distorted instead of working as one cohesive team?
Absolutely. And let me be real clear. I'm not perfect at all. And I haven't had 100% success. I'm not, I've had a couple of situations that were very, very difficult and things, but I think building trust is really important. And it's not, you may come into an organization, you've got street credibility, you've got street cred, you've had, I walk into an organization, I don't plan on going back to work full time ever again. I'm retired now. But if I do, the fact that I've got 47 years of work in hospitals and hospitality doesn't mean squat. Like if you got new employees, you have to earn trust. It's not given right from the beginning up and everything else. And so one of the things is just to, try to measure that. And if there's not a level of trust, I try to let the employees know that their involvement from an innovation standpoint and problem solving isn't a nice to have.
Mm.
It's required. It's required. Everybody has to innovate. And again, especially I go back to the gift of desperation, especially if it's a situation or organization that's in a very difficult situation. They need to make radical change over the relatively short period of time. But that aside, a lot of times there's not trust. And so what I try to, tell people is I think that most employees know what the next right thing to do is. I believe that. Even in a culture that's top down or whatever, I think most employees know what the next right thing to do is. They know what the next wrong thing to do is, or then certainly know what a wrong thing to do. So what I try to communicate and build is that if you do the next right thing, I will always have your back, 100% of the time. That will never waver. Bumgrad specifically, we were the first hospital in Asia to implement Salesforce Service Cloud for our CRM, our customer relation management tool. And it was a major change. The hospital had been using a very old Microsoft Dynamics system that was outdated and hadn't been updated in years. And so there was not trust. I was a Farang, the worst kind of Farang. I'm an American. And I respect that. I'm okay. But I've implemented CRMs before and telephone systems and things of that nature. And I've just basically said, look, if when things go well, you get the credit. If things go south, when we hit speed bumps, and we will hit speed bumps, so I will take the responsibility. So at the end of the day, when we go live and we make all the changes, we mapped all of our data through and everything else, you get the credit when things go well. But if this thing fails and blows up, I will voluntarily resign my position. I will take 100% total responsibility. So even saying that, if you're not a known entity within your organization, becomes a little bit of a struggle. There's still not, but then you have incremental wins. I think in any project like that, this is back in 2019, you want to come up with a project implementation scheme. I think good project managers, you make sure you have some early wins, some things like that. And so when you have some early wins, you basically, that's it. You have, on Friday, we're having free pad thai gung for everybody, or whatever, a pizza party or whatever it might be. And so you start to build a little bit of that, everything else, so that the staff starts to realize, this guy's legit. Things are going well. We're hearing about it. Sometimes not everybody want to follow. And I think it's not uncommon in organizations. This is very difficult. You have employees who are passive aggressive. So they tell you to your face that they're in sync. They won't say anything, which is probably the worst. Or they'll say they're in agreement. They're working towards everything else, but they do just the opposite. And then there's always the possibility that passive aggressiveness turns into sabotage. And that, in my opinion, cannot be tolerated. I've used the adage for over 40 years. Making a mistake is one thing. If you make a mistake, I make mistakes every day. I'm forgiven every day. I try to be a better person, a better father, a better husband, a better manager. But so I'm not perfect. But if you do things that are intentionally wrong, like if you lie, cheat, or steal from me, not necessarily me, but from my organization, that I'm in a leadership role, it's difficult for me not to personalize that. I do. I literally, if I'm not that invested in the organization, I need to be finding another organization to work. That's it. And so when people make mistakes, everything else, you just have to say, okay, what happened? Why did we do what we did and everything else? Same with it starts. So you're in a new leadership role. You're in a contact center in hospitals. I've got a couple of examples, but that operate 24/7. Bumgrad, for instance, they receive probably over 3,000 emails a day, 24/7, over 3,000 phone calls a day, 7 days a week. And so you've always got to the staff that work 24/7. It truly is an international hospital. I've been another hospital I worked at in India had a similar situation and stuff. And so after taking over administrative responsibility, I would get a phone call on a Saturday or a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Mr. David, XYZ, this is what the situation is and everything else. Great. Okay. What do you recommend that we do? And they would recommend something. And I'd say, that's perfect. Why did you call me? Like, help me to understand. You know what the right thing you did. You recommended the right. It's exactly perfect and everything else. And so one by one, and not browbeat them, not criticize them for calling, because if it really is an emergency or something, I lived only a 9-minute walk. I could take a tuk-tuk and be there in 3 minutes. That's how you build trust. Is to not raise your voice, not use profanities, not get arraigned, but use each one of those as a learning and a teaching opportunity.
Like an empowerment things, like, okay, you let them try and then tell them what are the things that they can make the decisions by themselves, and then empowered those people to make the decisions. I'm just curious about you mentioned just now a little funny point of like the worst foreigners, like American Farang as a boss. Why are you saying that? What made you say that?
Happy to have that conversation. Americans, I think, until 9/11 happened, only 17% of Americans had passports. After 9/11, you had to have a passport to get into Mexico or Canada. A lot of people would go back and forth right now. So it was 17%. As of last week, it's about 50%. Part of that is increasingly people go back and forth. But increasingly with baby boomers have on their hands time and money. So increasingly people my age are retired. They've got money. They want to travel for the first time. And I never agreed with it. I tried to travel, spend a little money along the way. The Dalai Lama says try to visit 1 new country a year. I tried to visit 2 new countries a year. Americans, for the most part, have, I think, we're at best myopic, which means nearsighted. We're at best myopic. At worst, we're xenophobic. Okay. So because many Americans don't travel, we really don't know what butter chicken's like in New Delhi. We don't know that Hyderabad has the best chicken biryani in the entire world. Many Americans, if not most, when they travel to France, they travel to Thailand, they expect everything to be the same as it was in their hometown. If the food's not the same, if the pillow in the hotel is not the same, if the lack of sense of urgency is not the same or whatever. Yeah, I've had many foreigners, let's say, for instance, like in Paris, one of my favorite cities on earth. Many Americans go to Paris and they feel like they get treated very rudely and everything else. Well, we generally get from other people the response that we elicit from them, whether we know it or not. And I believe that. And so, if we just learn how to say, merci, merci beaucoup, and s'il vous plaît, you just learn how to say please and thank you. If you try to speak the language a little bit, it opens up. It took me 2 years to learn how to say soda water nam keng. But at least the wait staff understand, he wants ice. So it's, so it's just.
Are you adapting your leadership style according to the place that you lead or according to the people that you lead?
I think a combination of both. Now, every manager, I think, has their strong hand. A strong hand meaning they're comfortable in managing in a certain way. Talk about Thailand. This is not America. The management style, my management style in Thailand has to be and had to be when I was like working at Bummergrad, significantly different than it used to be in America. You have to be careful about your nonverbals. Americans generally are direct and curt, sometimes being rude, and that's not Thai culture at all. And I learned very early that you never have to raise your voice to a Thai in the service business. You never have to use profanities, because what I learned was that most Thais internalize if something goes wrong, they know it and they feel badly about it, and so it creates pain, internal pain, and everything else. So you don't need to again, you don't need to raise your voice and everything. So that's just it's just a different approach.
David, of all the 47 years of experience of leading change, taking part in that change, successfully helping, would you be able to summarize what strategies stick and what ones do not stick when you're trying to lead change?
I think things that stick: being honest,
Mm,
being open with your employees,
mm,
listening, trying to build trust, trying to build respect. I think certainly are really important. Do what you say you're going to do.
mm,
You make a commitment to things, and you don't get a second chance. If you do something immoral, it, it may not make a big difference in California or New York City. In other places, in Thailand, it absolutely makes a difference. And
mm,
so in some circles, many circles, we are in fact judged by the company we keep, whether
mm,
we want to believe it or not. And, so if you hang out in the wrong places, we don't need to be specific. I think you get it. But if we hang out in the wrong places, and it's not going to be invisible, that's could be a pain
mm,
point. And
mm,
so you need to be, I think, very cautious of that. The flip side is, if you want to be held in high esteem, then you do esteemable things. Rotary is a service organization, like our business is service related. And the Rotary motto is service above self. And so there's lots of, you can seek opportunities, anybody, not you particularly, but anybody can seek opportunities to do esteemable things. And that's why I encourage young people to get involved in Rotary. And there are other organizations as well. Rotary was the one I chose early on in my career. We have a project we do at our Rotary Club. We provide AED pads. There are 24 EMS crews around
mm,
Phuket. Many of them have the AED machines, the chest pads,
mm.
but they don't
Yeah.
have the 2,400 baht to buy the actual. These are disposables. These are supposed to
Mm,
be used one time. They plug
mm,
into their machine and use one time. So we started a program in our Rotary Club. Bummangrad donated to it. My wife and I donated to it and stuff. So we raised a bunch of money so that the crews here in Phuket would never have to go without. And so we've started that July of 2024. We've already saved 6 human beings who would be dead otherwise. And so that's and we'll keep going on. So I just happen to have 2 in my house in case it's after hours. The Bummangrad office is closed on a Saturday or Sunday. So there's lots of opportunities to do things like that. Our Rotary Club provided a boat for at Patong Beach. We have, especially in the off season, we have drownings. It seems like almost every day, but certainly multiple drownings a week, and because of the riptides when the winds blow from west to east. And so we bought a fully outfitted boat for the lifeguards and everything at Patong Beach. We're in the process right now of funding, and we've got other revenue or donations from other Rotary clubs. We're gifting 2 ambulances, one in Talang and one in Patong Beach, to the EMS crews. They're fully outfitted. So all the equipment, everything inside, hundreds of thousands of Thai baht. Millions actually of Thai baht that we've raised in the last year or so for this project. And that's pretty close to coming to fruition. So for people, if you want to serve other people, you want to be held in high esteem, you do esteemable things. It feels good. It literally feels good to serve other people, I think.
It seems you're trying to answer more on a base level, foundational things. So the mindset that you go in when you're trying to lead change, you've got to be honest with them, listen to them. And if you're trying to evoke a certain behavior, you got to be the role model of that behavior as well.
Yeah,
That's very
absolutely.
good.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. So modeling behavior is really important.
Mm,
2 of the things I think, security and
mm,
marketing, are everybody's responsibility in any
mm,
service business, but let's just pick
mm,
hotels and hospitals. And so, again, I may have used this adage before, but when just about every time I've joined a new organization, I always park my car the furthest away, because many times
mm,
when I showed up in the new job, the parking lot was empty because volume had dropped down. They were having financial problems and things. So I would try to park as far away as I could. because I knew that one day we were going to be successful. Failure was not going to be an option. And number two, people would start at some point complaining about parking. Okay, but I can say I parked further away for the last 2 years. And so I would ask for you to be flexible. And we're spending money on capital equipment to treat our patients better, not to make more parking lots or, convenient, whatever. So my grandmother taught me this when I was in high school. If you do something every day that your employer does not expect or pay for you, then you'll never want for work. You'll never be out of a job if you do something every day. So truly, if I'm walking from my car to the hospital and I see, a McDonald's cup on the ground or whatever, I pick it up. If there's trash, I pick it up. If it's something with bacteria or potentially viral or whatever, I literally stop. Now I call on my phone, call the maintenance or housekeeping, say I need somebody out in the parking lot. We've got a diaper, for instance, it needs to be picked up. I don't have gloves in my car or whatever, but we need to, we can't leave it there. So everybody's responsible. And again, I won't bore you with the stories. I've got a bunch, but literally people are looking out of the windows. If you do that on a regular basis, not necessarily to be seen, but people will see you, employees will see you, and they will start doing it as well. And once that happens, then you never have to pay to get your parking lots clean. They're clean automatically because anybody, and then of course, if somebody is seen throwing a McDonald's glass, a cup on the ground, whatever it might be, there's peer pressure about, hey, we clean this up. This is a reflection of all those types of things. So that's everybody's responsibility. And I think, I try to model that behavior, but try to instill that in all the employees. And marketing is the same way. If you have ugly, negative things to say about your employer, in this case, the hospital, I prefer that you come and see me directly and not put them in a public domain, whether it's Line, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, because it's hurting the entire brand. So the next challenge, new thing that's coming up in healthcare and everything else, that leadership might be ignoring or not paying sufficient attention to. And I think it's key. And I think that's humanoid robotics. AI, I think, is going to increasingly be used, already is, in the whole insurance patient registration process, certainly in some clinical with diagnostic imaging. Bummangrad, for instance, was the first user in the world of a IBM program for oncology, and our physicians used it not to diagnose, but for treatment options and stuff like that. And so Watson for Oncology, it was called, and now I think it's been done away with. But Watson for Oncology, they loaded something like 11 or 12,000 pages of documents, updated Watson for Oncology every single week. And so the physicians for, Bummangrad is a tertiary and quaternary level hospital. We're the only hospital in Thailand, private hospital, that's allowed to do heart transplants. And so our oncologists then were able to say, okay, I've got a definite diagnosis on a particular I'm not a clinician, so I'm going to not step out of my bounds, but we have a specific diagnosis. And then they could seek input from Watson for Oncology. What are the latest and greatest as of last week of what protocols, what treatment regimes are being offered in the world? So, I think a lot of AI right now, I think, is the dividends, the benefits are going to be 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. But I think humanoid robotics, I think, is a significant game changer. I would say in the next 12 to 24 months. We've already started. I follow this very, very closely. And if you look at, just watch videos on YouTube of Tesla Optimus, that humanoid robotic does unbelievable. I watched this one of it snowboarding down a hill, and I thought for sure it was a human being inside of a costume. But at the end of the video, so just in the last 2 weeks, Elon Musk has come out and he basically has made the statement that Optimus, that humanoid robotics will be doing surgeries with 100% quality and perfection. That's a real use. There's another great company called Enchanted Tools in Paris. I went to visit them back in September. But I went and did it on site, and it's really interesting what they're doing, but it's all tied in with machine learning and everything else. And so I think that we're just starting to see now, I think in China, in the last 4,
Mm.
5, 6, 7 weeks, we're starting to see a Chinese humanoid robots actually in service roles,
Mm.
taking people from the front desk at a hotel to their room and everything else. And you might think that's pretty cold or whatever, and I think there's a balance. I'm old school. I'm a
Mm.
huge nursing advocate. I want nurses to nurse. When I'm on my deathbed, um, I don't want an avatar to give me or a robot to give me my last shot of morphine. But not only, I think in Thailand, we're probably about 30,000 nurses short right now.
Mm.
In the US, I think we're 78,000 nurses short. Countries around the world are really dealing with that. And I'll say this to be, I'm a huge support. I'm a huge advocate of nursing, but we need to figure out ways to take unnecessary administrative tasks off of their shoulders and
Mm.
lump them. Most people go into nursing because they're empathetic people, because they want to be at the bedside, they want to help people and everything else. And so um, I think I think at some point sooner than later we'll start to see some pretty significant benefits of humanoid robotics. I will tell you, I have a Google alert for humanoid robotics in healthcare and hospitality and hotels. And every day I get about probably 25 or 30 articles. So there's a
Mm.
lot being published out there. But if you're not looking for it, you're not going to see it,
Mm.
right? But
Mm.
so I think there's significant development being made in that space, and I think that's going to be a big one sooner than later.
It's like really abrupt change because
Mm.
not only about you need to lead organizations, of course, to have the benefits, the profits out of that, and then you also need to lead their staff to be adaptive to all these new
Mm.
technologies and other things. Because as we know, it's not easy for getting people to change the way they work when all this
Not You're
exactly.
right. It's not. It's difficult. And please, I'm not trying to minimize any of this. It's been I've you try
Mm.
different things, and over the course of a 47-year healthcare management career, you learn different things and everything else. You read books. I read a book back probably in the early 80s called 1001 Ways to Incentivize Your Employees,
Mm.
and almost every single one of those is still valid today.
Mm.
But you got to read the book, right?
Mm.
That's where
Yeah.
admittedly, that's where I got the idea for the car wash thing that I told you about. Literally, it
Mm.
came from that book. I posted something on my LinkedIn page about a week ago. From the Taj Hotel in Dubai,
Mm.
and I got there. I intentionally planned a 24-hour layover in Dubai 3 weeks ago. I got there Friday night to the hotel about quarter of midnight, and I left the following at about night day about 11. And the doorman, this particular Sikh fellow, was there when I got out of the car, and I get out, and he looks at me surprised and was like, "Mr. David, what are you doing here? Welcome back," and literally hugged me, but remembered
Wow.
my name and hugged me. And so he was there. I lived in that area in Business Bay in Dubai for the 2 years that I was there. But for the first month or so that I was there, I actually lived at the Taj Hotel. And he was the night guy. He worked from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'm a morning runner. I would go out and run my 5 kilometers, come in the front door, and he, of course, he would give me a towel and a cold water and everything. And so that's how we got to know each other, was literally at 6:30 in the morning when I was coming back in from a run. And but he remembered the name. On the way out the next day, uh, Saturday Saturday evening, I said,
Mm.
can we have our picture made, Mr. Singh? He said,
Mm.
sure. So we had our picture made. I put it on my LinkedIn page. I think I haven't looked today, but as of yesterday or a couple of days ago, it has over 34,000 views. 34,000. Now I tagged Taj Hotels to it, and I tagged what's the name of the book? Unreasonable Hospitality,
Mm.
and it's been shared like 4 or 5 times. I've had probably, I don't know, 150 comments on it, but literally over 34,000 impressions have actually seen that stuff. So, um, you know, that's the human element. That's
Mm.
the that's that. Now he may have known that a repeat customer was coming in at about what time and everything, but I could tell by his facial expression that he was genuinely surprised that I got out of the
Mm.
car. And I was genuinely surprised when he was there and that he remembered he has a handlebar mustache. If you go to the
Mm.
picture and look at it, he's got this
Yeah.
incredible handlebar
Mm.
mustache. When I retired the last time from when I left Dubai in 2022, I went back to, I actually grew a mustache. So I aspire to be like him. I was going to try to, my beard is now white, totally white. And I actually was going to try to grow a handlebar mustache, but
But I just saying that even you are fans of how advanced technology could help or the human like robotic things, still the human touch and that relationship is still playing a big role in people's heart.
Right.
So
Absolutely. I think one of the phrases we use at Bummergrad are high tech with Thai touch. So high tech with
with
Thai
Thai
touch.
touch.
Yeah.
And that's I think that says it all. We don't use it uniformly, but that really, Bummergrad has been in robotics for years. We had the first fully robotic laboratory in Asia. We had the first fully robotic inpatient pharmacy in Asia, and that our pharmacy I think is probably 14 years old now. And that allowed us to literally generate Six Sigma quality and safety in our medication with medication errors and things. We obviously do robotic surgery and other things like that. So, I can tell you that Bummergrad is from an innovation perspective is listening. They're out there, they're looking, they're watching for the next big thing in innovation in a number of ways, places I can't even imagine. I'm not at the table any longer, but there's just a lot of change and huge innovation going on in the world. Bummergrad wants to be on the leading edge. We don't necessarily want to be on the bleeding edge. It's called. So we want to make sure that things are safe and everything else. But anyways, well, listen, thank you both. I've appreciated
Okay.
the time. And
No,
this has
it's
been
actually going to
hopefully
be us that's saying
Yeah.
that it is really interesting and eye-opening conversations that we had. So thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
with us and also spending time with us.
Yes.
Yes.
Yendi Cup
Yeah.
for sure. It's been my pleasure.